Greetings from the top of a hill. It's very windy here. I'm in the middle of a vineyard. The sun is going down. My shadow is about 40 meters long at this stage. And I'll show you the vineyard. I'll crouch back down. This will be an easygoing video. The other day I bumped into a couple I know them well. They're in their 60s and they were all dressed up and they looked to be in a bit of a rush. So they stopped for a few seconds to say hello, and then they said, we have to dash because we have an appointment. And I said, oh, fair enough. And they walked on. And I walked on. And suddenly I heard the woman's voice calling after me, so I turned around. And she said, it's not an appointment I really want to keep. And I said, oh, I see. And I was thinking maybe it's maybe it's a visit to a doctor about getting results back, results that could determine, how many weeks you've got left or how many months you've got left. Or maybe that it was benign. Or maybe it was an appointment to the dentist. Very few people, hardly anyone actually, looks forward to going to the dentist. But I didn't ask, I didn't pry. And the woman turned back around. She turned back around and her husband was waiting for her. She caught up with him and then they walked on. And then I turned around and I went off in the opposite direction. And I was thinking, isn't it nice that you have a married couple in their 60s, and they have a support unit between them. They go to each other's appointments. One is supporting the other, physically, mentally, whatever. And then I thought of family, obviously no family is perfect. Family members fall out. Sometimes blood isn't thicker than water, but generally the family is a support unit. And I was thinking how modernity, mass media, there are other names I could use for it. But yeah, we think of all these horrible psychological games, psychological warfare that's waged against a social unit, even just a husband and a wife, even just a family. And I was thinking, isn't it great that this couple in their 60s have each other's backs, in sickness and in health, all the days of your life. Yep. So I thought that was positive, actually. I thought that was quite positive. The woman was nervous. Now you can see the husband was there to keep her calm, relax her. As they went off to perhaps receive good news or bad news, or to lie back on the dentist's chair, or it could be some legal matter. Who knows? Not my business. It's their business. Anyway, the lighter side of this video, even though, as I say, I think it was a positive thing just seeing this couple going off. It was as if they were swimming against the current, as if they'd hatched from a lump of amber. You know, your grandparents would have been like that. Your great-grandparents would have been like that. And now if you have a couple like that, they're bucking the trend. I was in a cafe the other day, and I'm rereading Orwell's 1984, and I decided that I wasn't going to sit down. I was going to stand while I had my coffee and read about 6 pages. And I went to the end of the counter where there was more light to read, and about 2 minutes from finishing up, an old man came right beside me and he said, can I sit in that chair? And he had a newspaper. I said, sure, work away. And he ordered, I think he ordered breakfast and a coffee. I could see him eyeing my book, because I had closed it at this stage. I was finishing off the coffee. So, just to say something, because he looked like he wanted to converse, I pointed at the cover of 1984, where you've got, on the cover I have, it's like a pyramid with an eye inside it. And I said, you know what? I said, this book here I have, George Orwell, I said, it's less fictitious than that newspaper you have in your hand. And he smiled. He said, that's quite possible. And then I put the book in a bag and I left. I said, good luck. Now that brings me on to something else. I've noticed it on 3 different occasions in the last 4 weeks. I'm in a cafe, I'm sitting at a table, and an old man will come in. And when I say old, I don't mean in his 90s. He's possibly in his late 60s, early 70s. An old man will come in, and as I say, this happened on 3 occasions, 3 different old men. They did the exact same thing. They came in, they ordered a coffee at the bar, at the counter. They got their coffee and they went over and they sat at a table. They sat at a table. They picked up the sachet of sugar. They opened it. Oh, there's a gust coming now. It's going to get dark probably within 20 minutes. I'll have to leave soon because it's not easy coming back down from this hill. My night vision is terrible. My vision is terrible, but my night vision is even worse. So they open the sachet of sugar, they rip it open, they put the sugar into the coffee, they pick up the little spoon, the teaspoon, and they proceed to stir their coffee. And they stir, and they stir, and they stir. And as they stir, they make a lot of noise. Clink, clank, clunk. Clink, clank, clunk. And you're sitting at the next table, or maybe 2 tables away, and you can hear this racket, and you look at the guy, the old man, and you think, right, I think he's kind of stirred it enough at this stage. But no, the old man hasn't finished. He continues stirring. 5 minutes go by. And then you kind of, because the clink, clank, clunk becomes routine, you kind of forget about it. You don't really hear it. But then 5 minutes on from that, it comes back into your consciousness. Clink, clank, clunk. That old man over there is still stirring his coffee. And then you forget about it. 5 minutes later, the same. And you work out. At some stage, he's been stirring his coffee for about 20 minutes. And now it gets interesting. Now you're watching the old man. you're trying not to be noticed by him. You catch a glance at him now and then, stare if possible, and then as soon as he looks, you look away. Clink, clank, clunk. And you're not going to say anything to him because he's an old man, and maybe this is how the old man meditates, by ordering a coffee and stirring it for 20 minutes non-stop. Clink, clank, clunk. And you wonder where his mind is at. You think of a football game where the ball is kicked sky high and the commentator says the ball's going to come back down with snow on it. And you wonder if this old man, his mind is going to come back down to the ground with snow on it. He's away with the fairies. Clink, clank, clunk. And then he stops. It's a remarkable thing. He stops. He just suddenly stops. And all this time he's been staring at his coffee and then staring into space and then staring back at his coffee, staring into space. Suddenly he looks at the coffee as though it were a real thing. And he looks at his coffee with accusation. With accusation. He drops the spoon. And he can see now that there's no steam coming off his coffee. His coffee is cold. And the old man's not going to drink a cold coffee. He gets up. He walks towards the counter. But then he suddenly decides, no, I'll just leave. And he leaves the cafe. So he's ordered a coffee. And he hasn't drunk it. I spoke to several people about this phenomenon. And they laughed. And they said to me, oh, it's very common around here. It's very common around here that men, particularly old men, they stir their coffees for 20 minutes, maybe even half an hour. Some even stir their coffee for an hour. And they make as much noise as possible while they do it. Clink, clank, clunk. And they said it's a sport here, in these here parts. It's a regional sport. Ordering a coffee and not drinking it, just stirring it. Yeah. Anyway, let's get one last look at this vineyard. Yeah, I'll leave you with these 3 words of wisdom. I think you know what these words are going to be. Clink, clank, clunk.